I need to tell you before we get started, I'm not a financial advisor, and meaning that I'm not a licensed financial advisor, and I have not been approved to give financial advice. So what I'm giving you is my opinion, and I'm discussing what my thoughts are, my opinions, and how I do things. And being that I've been retiree lifestyle for almost 4 decades, this is my opinion, and let's get started. Can Bitcoin help you retire early or retire early lifestyle? Is Bitcoin something you should be investing in? Well, I'll tell you, I think so. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to that. Let me just give you an introduction on this. You've got to understand the asset classes, because we have to be able to compare asset classes, or we could just talk about Bitcoin, but a lot of people don't understand Bitcoin, and a lot of people aren't sure about Bitcoin. And so in order to get a more well-rounded view, we're just going to talk about how does it fit in with every other asset class, like gold and silver. In the grand scheme of things, what goes up must come down. Anything that has the potential to go up, say, tenfold, can potentially give you, but there are story stocks, for example, okay? That's any asset class always seems to have some kind of a story going behind it. For example, gold and silver between 1980 and 2000, the storyline on that was that it was just recoiling back from, it was a 10-year pullback. For 10 years it did nothing but pull back. And why is that? Well, if you look at the forever chart, gold and silver went parabolic after Nixon removed the money supply, the US dollar, from being tied to gold and silver. So after that it went parabolic, and after something goes parabolic, which means it goes up way too much and way too fast, too short a time, then it's going to do its little filling in. And in this case of gold and silver, it took 20 years, and then started going back up and made all-time new highs. So the storyline behind the asset is what we're talking about here. If you're looking at putting your money into things that last, gold and silver is one of those things that lasts. So what's the storyline on real estate? The storyline on real estate in America is that it pretty much always goes up, except for when it's crashing. Well, the same thing can be said for the stock market, but most of the time real estate goes up. Most of the time the stock market goes up. There are periods when it goes down longer, most of the time 3 years or less, but there have been times when it has done nothing in 10 or 15 years, such as in 2000. So there's always a possibility of an asset class that historically would lead you to believe that this is going to always go up. It seems like the times when that happens fluctuate. And so then the question becomes, well, what's it done recently? Well, if recently it's had a really nice 20-30 year history, then that means that there's a more of a likelihood that you may get a longer bear market in it. And that's in a nutshell. So because like real estate didn't do anything during the crash in America, and yet overall, quote unquote, long term, it has always gone up. And when we have a history on something like real estate in the USA and gold and silver, then it gives us a sense of trust. We have something that we can look back on the historical and say, well, this is what's happened. So we look at the macro view, the long-term historical, and then we look at the most recent historical, like the last 20-30 years, for the purposes of deciding, well, what's the likelihood of going into a long bear market. And right now the US stock market has had a pretty long run-up. We could get a short bear, but we could get a long bear. It's got a lot to do also with geopolitics and what's happening, and we all know what's happening. And so it just depends on how things tip and turn. So, it's a gamble on the stock market. Real estate could be the same thing right now. We could be entering an age where even though real estate always has gone up, it may kind of taper and not go up as fast. But it remains to be seen. That's probably not likely because of the fact that inflation, real estate tends to react well with inflation. And so the Bitcoin is similar. It's an asset class you have to ask yourself, do I trust this asset? And is there a reason to trust this asset? Is this asset trustworthy? Because a lot of people don't understand Bitcoin, they really need to do their due diligence on Bitcoin. And how do you do that? It's a new asset class. It's only been around, just over 10 years. And the history of it is that, well, it has always gone up. But because it goes up so fast, it always comes down a lot. And so here's the great holy grail, if you got to have one. If the price is down, just start trickling in and start adding to it little by little. If you trust the asset class and believe in it, here are some reasons to believe in Bitcoin. I'll give you that. It is a limited supply. It's the complete opposite of paper money, where there's an endless supply. Even stocks have a sort of unlimited supply, whereas Bitcoin has a limited supply. Anytime a thing is limited in its supply, it's just a question of time before the demand catches up with the lack of supply and the price goes up. And that's what happens to Bitcoin. The other thing is that Bitcoin has a lot of qualities to it that a lot of asset classes don't. For example, you can't really pack up your real estate and go anywhere with it. Sure, you could get management and you could leave it behind, but that has its pros and cons to it. Gold and silver is the same way. Nothing wrong with gold and silver, but again, it's not super portable. I've read lots of stories of people having difficulty crossing borders with gold and silver. So in that respect, something like Bitcoin shines. And if you should be adding to it while the price is down, well, this is a great time to be doing that. And so is Bitcoin something you should be investing in? Well, I'll tell you, I think so. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to that. I think it is, over the medium term, is a very good thing. Now, I know people that bought Bitcoin and it went way up and they were very well off, and then when it came back down, they were upset. So it's just a question of understanding that when prices are low, you want to be, stepping in, step up to the plate. When prices are at all-time highs, you want to be taking some off the plate. Don't just sit there and stare at it. So the difference between cryptocurrency and Bitcoin is that there's a lot of cryptocurrency. There's oodles of them. That's the thing about Bitcoin, is when it first came out, it was just Bitcoin. But then through the years, it got all these competitors. But they're not real competitors, so don't get confused between the real thing and the competition, because most of these competitors are worthless. They're worthless because the supply is not limited, and there's just so many of them that sure, they may go up, but they're just going to come down, and some of them are going to disappear because they're not real projects. So if you're wondering, yes, I'm pro Bitcoin as an investment vehicle, but it also has a utility. It's very useful. It's divisible. You can send $2 worth to somebody, or 200,000 or 200 million, however much you want, and you can do it in a few minutes. It has definitely kept up with inflation. It has been a great asset class, although a bit volatile, but I've already mentioned how to handle volatility. The hardest thing for people to do with volatility is act on something in a big way. So just remember to just, do things in a staggered fashion. So then when the price is at all-time highs, take a little bit out, and then when it goes a little higher, take a little more out. And when the price is low, put a little bit in. Don't put all of it in all at once. And then when it goes a little lower, put a little bit more in, like that. So don't do things all at once. That's what causes all the stress for people, that most people aren't really traders, and most people don't handle volatility very well. And the way to handle volatility, again, is to also not just by staggering your in and outs, but also having other activities going, so that you're not completely 100% dependent on one asset class. The great thing about Bitcoin is that it can meet your needs depending on who you are. You could be a young person that's starting out. You can put a part of your savings into it. and you can be someone that's more mature, that maybe you feel like life has passed you by and you just didn't quite, you know, you didn't seem to be able to get ahead. And, you know, maybe you didn't quite ever come up with that $1 million idea, and or maybe you did and it flopped, and, you know, all these reasons why we can sometimes feel like life has passed us by in a financial sense. But not if you've been living retiree lifestyle all along. You will never get on that train. You know, we encourage people to live their lives regardless what their station in life is live your life so that you don't have to feel like you've wasted your life. But if you are someone that would like to do better financially, Bitcoin could just be the ticket. You know, it's one of the greatest opportunities actually of our lifetime. You just have to kind of wait for these bear markets. These bear markets tend to last around 2 or 3 years. They're pretty long and they're pretty deep. And if it looks and sounds complicated to you, you can just buy Bitcoin in a brokerage, a regular stock brokerage account. You can buy the Bitcoin tracker stocks. But if you don't want to do that, you can also just go straight to buying Bitcoin. It's a little bit harder to find and to do, but you can do it. I hope you got some out of that. Let us know your thoughts, and thanks for coming to the video. Have a wonderful day.